We'll be looking at the very end of Ruth, the 4th chapter this morning. And we've come a long ways. I went back on the website, on the app yesterday, and I was doing some work, and I was listening, and I went back to the first couple of sermons, and I just listened. And then I went to the last couple of sermons, and I listened to those. Besides for the poor speaking ability of the preacher, the message was pretty good. What a contrast where Ruth and Naomi began and where we're going to find them today. Now, we've all had experiences in life that seem to be too good to be true, haven't we? The day that Miss Terry decided that she told me she wanted to marry me was one of those days. It was too good to be true. I kid you. That was like God answered about 1,000 prayers all at once. And then, too easy for jokes, so I'm not going to do it. And then the day we got married, that was a red letter day. That was one that it was like, yeah, God, you're good. And then we had 3 boys. And each one of them just was an amazing thing. And well, y'all know about that, don't you? It's just an amazing thing about how, God gives life. And, you just want to say, life is so good. God is so good. Those days you just say, is this real life? Is this real? Somebody pinch me. Is it right? And we've had those other days too, but we don't want to talk about those this morning. Because I want you to focus on how what the great things God has done. And I suppose this is how Ruth is feeling today in our passage. She finds herself in a situation that is just unbelievably good. It's not supposed to happen. You see, in the verses in this little book, Ruth has worn the garments of a wife. She's worn the garments of a worker. She's worn the garments of a woman. I'm sorry, the person was widowed. And at the end, she's wearing the garments of a wife. She's going to get married. And it must have felt like a fairy tale. Happily ever after. That's what everybody wants, is a happily ever after, right? Well, they got married. They're going to get married, and there's going to be some good times, but there's also going to be some bad times. But for this moment, God had answered her prayers. God had fulfilled her plan, her dreams, and also fulfilled God's plan for her. She must have felt like Cinderella as the handsome prince comes in and sweeps her off her feet to live happily ever after. And if you stop and think of all the redeemed, what all the redeemed enjoy in Jesus. Really think about it. Don't you feel like you're in a fairy tale too? God chose you to live forever with Him in glory. That there is more to this life than just living and dying. Sometimes I just sit and ponder about what all Jesus has done for me and in me. Over the years of how He's changed me. And I just want to say, somebody pinch me. All those things early on in my life that I desired. That God wanted to do, He gave me. Sometimes I just want to think, forget it. Is this real? And if you'll join me for a few minutes, we're going to look at 3 experiences that Ruth had in these closing verses that may have left her wondering if she was dreaming. In verses 13 and 14, this is Ruth and her waiting experience. He says, "Stay this night." Now remember the setting. She has spent the night at his feet, and Basically what this was a courting ritual saying, I want you to, with a female, I want you to marry me. Nothing untowards about it. It's just the way they did things. She uncovered his feet and asked, would you redeem me? This is where we pick up. Stay this night. And in the morning it shall be that if he will perform the duty of a close relative for you, good. Let him do it. But if he does not want to perform the duty for you, then I will perform the duty for you as the Lord lives. Lie down until morning. So she lay at his feet until morning, and she arose before one could recognize another. And then he said, do not let it be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. Boaz told her to tarry this night. His promise to her was that when morning came, he would see to it that she was redeemed one way or the other. Now, remind you that we're in nighttime now, and we're to wait patiently upon our heavenly Boaz to see to the needs of this life. We are to wait. I get tired of waiting. Don't y'all? It seems like I spend most of my time waiting, whether it's in lines or in traffic. I bet we spend probably 5% of our life waiting on something. I don't like waiting. I want it now. I want to know the good or the bad of it. Now, I just want to remind you that he is still Jehovah Jireh, which means the Lord will see to it. It will happen. Have you prayed prayers before that said, Lord, I need this. This needs to happen, and it didn't happen immediately? Well, patience. And so, no matter how dark the way becomes, when the morning comes, he'll meet all the needs of our life. Boaz told her, don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of it. In Psalms 30 and verse 5. Psalms 30 and verse 5. It tells us, it's not there. All right. It tells us that he's going to meet all of our needs. You can trust Jesus to meet our needs and to finish what he started. Now, are there projects, things that you've told people you would do that you started but never finished? Anybody ever done that? You had great intentions on doing it, but then after a while somebody said, well, he's not going to finish it. Or she's not going to finish it. And maybe you forget about it. But the point is here is that Jesus, once he starts something, he will finish it. It may not be on your time schedule, but he will finish it. In Philippians 1:6. Tell me that's on there. In Philippians 1:6, y'all know what that is. He will continue to finish what he starts. And so nothing arises in life that's going to stop the fulfillment of God's plan for you. Nothing. And so she waited at his feet. Ruth spent the night at the feet of Boaz just as she had been instructed, and she knew that as he would do what he promised. She knew that. And so she waited. You know, I can imagine the saints that Jesus is a refuge from the stormy winds, raging seas of life. I want to remind you about that. He has promised us a safe place in this life. There's no better place for the suffering saint than to be near his feet, to be with him. How often do we talk about the last couple of weeks being at Jesus' feet? It's the safest place to be. It's a place that you can trust. Until he comes, Mark yourself off a place at his feet that you'll be moved by nothing that life throws at you. It was a time of waiting. The time of waiting. Boaz, in verse 13 of chapter 4. Chapter 4, verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And when he went into her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. The story up to this point was, as she was at his feet, he determined, she went back home, talked to Naomi. Naomi told her to wait. And we talked about that a lot, about her waiting, and how she must have felt. He went to the marketplace, and there was a near kinsman, one who had the first dibs, if you will, on whether to redeem Ruth and Naomi. Because he was a nearer kin than Boaz. And what does it take to be a kinsman redeemer? First off, you've got to be near kin. Second off, you've got to have the resources to buy back the lands that were lost. And then the third thing is you need to be willing. And this near kinsman said, yeah, I'll buy back the lands. I'll redeem. I've got the money. I can do that. But when it came to when Ruth and Naomi was included in the deal, he said, no, I'm not doing that. And so that put Boaz in a position to where he could redeem her. And as soon as that deal was done, he turned and looked around at all the people around him because they made that business deal. He says, Ruth is going to be my wife this day. And it happened. Boaz saw his plan completed when Ruth was redeemed and when she became his bride. He paid the price for her because his love for her, and he was magnified as a result. In other words, by what he did, he was magnified. The word took means to carry away, to fetch. And what a picture of that which our heavenly Boaz, God, will do for us when he returns for his bride. He's going to take us. He's going to take us. He's going to catch us away. And you'll see his plan completed when his bride is safe with him in glory. I want you to think about that. Right now, we're near his feet. But one day, when it is completed, when it's done, he's going to take us away. And we'll be his forever. Friends, if you're saved, what this means is that you're going home. On that day, he will receive all the praise he is worthy of today. Boaz was going, everybody was going, yay, Boaz, you did great. What did Ruth do? Nothing. Boaz did everything. When you were saved, what did you do? The same thing that Ruth did. Ask. You see, Boaz did all the work. Boaz did everything necessary. Boaz was the only one that could redeem Ruth. And so it is with God. He is the only one that can redeem us because of his Son. No one else is qualified. No one else was near kin. And no one else wanted to. But Jesus did. And he did because he loved us. You know, it was a time of glory for the groom. But it was also a time of grace for the bride. In spite of her past, Ruth was accepted in Boaz. You know, we put a lot of limits in our lives today because of our past, about who we think we are. Well, I'm just not good enough. I could never get into college because I'm just not smart. I could never go out with her because, well, look at me, look at her, right? I could never stand in front of someone and speak because, well, I have a speech impediment. I stutter. There are all kinds of excuses, and we put labels on who we are. And I want you to imagine Ruth, when she came into this land of Moabites, someone who was despised by everyone in there. And by the time the harvest season came through and was finished, she had the respect because of her behavior and because of who she was as a person. She had the respect of everyone. She had caught the eye of Boaz. Then, they're getting married. It was the most unlikely marriage between two people. When God wants something to happen, He will make a way. We're going to see that today. He makes a way. In spite of her past, Ruth was accepted in Boaz. When she was redeemed, a legal transaction took place. When a near kinsman plucked off a shoe as a sign that he could redeem Ruth, Boaz took that shoe, kept it as evidence that he was the Redeemer, and that Ruth had been forever redeemed from her past. Does your past continue to haunt you? It shouldn't. If you know Christ as your Savior, because your past is just what it says. Your past, He has already, if you're a child of God, He has dealt with it, He has put it aside, and you are no longer held accountable for it. He looks at you in a different way. He looks at you in a way as a father does a son or a daughter. He looks at you through the rose-colored eyes, the blood-colored eyes that He has. He only sees the Son's blood when He sees He covers our sins. It doesn't matter anymore. With Ruth, it had been very easy for people to say, you can't do that. You can't marry her. She is unclean. But this is what God wants. In Jesus and through His blood, we are accepted. It's not because of anything I've done. It's not because I'm a good person. It's not because I've done good things. It's not because I went into the ministry. It's not any of those things that I've done. He redeemed me because He loved me. Period. The Bible reminds us that in spite of what we were, because of Jesus, we're forever redeemed. His grace has changed everything for those who trust Him for salvation. Do we have Ephesians 2:8 up? Ephesians 2:8. For by grace have you been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. Verse 9. That'd be the next verse. But he says, His grace has changed everything. Even when we were dead in trespasses, He made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved and raised up together and made us sit together in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. He has changed everything for us. Now, we don't have a shoe to prove that Jesus saved us. We have something far better than that. We have the Lord Himself sitting at the right hand of the Father, ever and ready to make intercession for us. We have an advocate in heaven who bears in His body the marks of the cross. In spite of what we were and who we are at times, we're going to stand in the heavenly places by His grace. We're going to be able to be there by His grace. In the last few passages here, I want to concentrate on verse 14. This is Ruth's worship experience. After redemption was concluded and the marriage was finished, there was a time of worship that began, and notice what prompted their praise. In verse 14, It says, then the woman said to Naomi, the women said to Naomi, blessed be the Lord who has not left you this day without a close relative, and may his name be famous in Israel. This verse indicates that God received the praise for the transaction. This is justified because he established a plan that brought Ruth and Boaz together, and he is exalted because of that plan. There's a lot of things in this life that we take credit for that we shouldn't. God was ultimately the one who should take credit. You say, well, Boaz did all that. Let's go back a little bit. There was when the walls of Jericho fell, there was a lady in that. Well, maybe you might not call her a lady. Remember a lady named Rahab, who escaped the walls of Jericho and became part of, okay? She got married to a Jew, and from that marriage came Boaz. Boaz is sitting there, doesn't have a wife, doesn't have a family, and Ruth is out there in the middle of Moab. Ruth is out there in the middle of Moab, that wash pot. And somehow, some way, Ruth makes her way back and ends up in her field. And once she gets in the field, they caught eyes together, and the next thing you know, they're having lunch together. Next thing you know, she's needing redemption, and he wants a wife, and the next thing you know, they find themselves on the threshing floor with her asking. And then he goes to actually redeem her. It is not a coincidence. He knew, God knew from the time of Rahab what was going to happen and what needed to happen. By the way, Rahab was a harlot. She wasn't even a Jew. God set this whole thing up. It is God's honor and to God's glory that the people should be given. I wish that I could take credit for the great victories in my life. Still trying to think of what they are. But I wish I could, but it is all God. When I was born, He knew that I'd be behind this pulpit this day telling you about Ruth and about how great He is and about how He should get the glory. May we never forget that all we have in Jesus is because of God's eternal decree, and that He is worthy to be praised because of it. It's all because of Him. Now, I told you that little story about Rahab, because we're going to see it here in the next few verses. Let's read verses 15 through 22. And may He be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you, who is better to you than 7 sons, has borne him. Then Naomi took the child, laid him on her bosom, and became a nurse to him. And also the neighbor woman gave him a name, saying, there is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now this is the genealogy of Perez. Perez begat Hezron. Hezron begat Ram. And Ram begot Amminadab. And Amminadab begat Nahshon. And Nahshon begat Salmon. Salmon begot Boaz. And Boaz begot Obed. Obed begot Jesse. And Jesse begot David, King David. Wow. Did you catch all some of those names? The child that Ruth and Boaz had together was named Obed. That name means worshiping. The son firmly fixed Ruth's place in Israel. You know, being a Hebrew was not a matter of nationality, but it was a religion. She was a Hebrew. She was adopted into God's people. You see, her redemption gave her legal status in the courthouse records. But this child gave her a connection with the royal family. She not only married somebody rich, but she was marrying someone who was going to be part of the royal family of the lineage. Obed was King David's grandfather, and this made Ruth David's great-grandmother. But better than that, she is named in Matthew 1:5. Look what it says. Salmon begot Boaz by Rahab. Boaz begot Obed by Ruth. And Obed begot Jesse, David's father. That's the lineage of Jesus Christ. That little boy changed everything for Ruth. So for Naomi, Ruth, and everyone involved, Obed became a restorer of life and a nourisher of thine old age, knowing the son was a blessing to all. Do you realize that when you look back, you see Rahab's name, you see Ruth's name in the lineage of Christ? God knew what He was doing. He put all this together. He knew that Boaz would fall for Ruth if he got Ruth to come there. Remember the decision that Ruth had early on? The decision for Ruth, do I go home or do I go with Naomi? She made the decision to follow Naomi, and she made the decision to take Naomi's God as her God. And everything fell together. You know, you may not see this in your life today. You may be wondering why things are going wrong. You may be wondering why things aren't quite the way they should be. Or where the path of your life is headed. But hindsight is 20/20. I look back on my life right now, and I see all the things, the setbacks, all the different places to go, all the things that I thought that I would be in life, and then this was not one of them. But God had set things in motion, and as these things happened, I was wondering, why are they happening? But now, from where I stand right now, I can see God's hand in every bit and partial of it. And the only thing that I could do, required to do, was to accept what God's will for what it was in my life, to follow Him. God has a plan for you. He had a plan for Ruth and Naomi, a plan for Boaz, and none of them knew what was in store. They got married, had a baby. Her lands were redeemed. Elimelech's line lineage would carry on. Genuine worship will always erupt out of a personal relationship with the Son. Those moments when life seems too good to be true, and you say, somebody just pinch me, please. Is it God getting the glory? Or is it us? True worship needs to come from a personal relationship. When you know Him, you know He is the one who's the restorer of life and the nourisher of all ages. If you know Him, you should rejoice in that fact. If you're a saved child of God, there is no excuse for us saying, well, woe is me. Life stinks. It's a terrible life. No. If you're a saved child of God, God has given you something very, very precious and something wonderful to look forward to. And a challenge in each day of wondering, what is God going to do in my life? God will do something new each day for us. What is that something new? What is it? If you don't know it, then you need to know that you can. That you can know it. And to know Him changes everything. I'm sure that as Ruth's life progressed, there were probably many days when she had to look at herself and say, teach me, please, I'm ready. God is just too good. Such is the power of grace in the life of all who pursued and captured by Him. Do you realize His grace is pursuing you and I today? It's not that He's holding back, it's that we're running away from Him. And He's constantly coming. Come here. I want to show you my grace. I want to show you my mercy. Grace can take you from nowhere as a nobody. It can change your life and can redeem you from death and place you in the family of the King. And the thing is that you have to be where you need to be at His feet, and you need to ask Him, Lord, save me. I want you to redeem me. Will you? There was no doubt what Boaz was going to tell Ruth. He already known what was going to happen. He knew that he would say yes. Do you believe that if you're here today and you've never asked Jesus Christ into your heart, into your life, you're not one of His children right now? Do you believe that if you ever came to Him and humbly bowed yourself before Him, and He's calling you saying, come on, and you say, Lord, would you save me? Do you think He would save me? No. He died in order for that to be able to have that opportunity. He wants you to be with Him in eternity. Are you living your life in the grace of God? Or are you living it into the horrors of this world? Would you like to know Him? Do you need to get at His feet this morning? Do you need to bow down before Him and say, Lord, I'm yours. I want this marvelous plan for my life. I want you to use it. I want you to see. I can't wait to see what you're going to do with my life tomorrow. Whatever you need, it'll be met by coming to Him and trusting Him to do some amazing things in your life through His amazing grace, because none of us deserve it. The book of Ruth is over, but the message continues today. The message never stops, does it? Until the Lord comes back, it'll always be about His love and about His grace and about His mercy. He's given us something we don't deserve. As we stand and we prepare an invitation, I don't know your heart, I don't know your life, I don't know why He felt, I don't know why He loved me so much. There's nothing really to love, but He does. But He does. And what He asks from us today is that we recognize Him as Savior. That we've asked Him into our hearts and our lives and realize that He is the Savior of us. He wants us to bow down before Him, say it at His feet. Quit walking, quit staying and living in Moab. He may be calling you home today. There are so many lessons that we've learned along the way from this journey through Ruth. But the one that sticks to me the best is about how even though we run off and run away from Moab, He still wants us back. Even though that we deny Him, He still wants us back. And if you're here this morning and that's the way you're feeling He'll never want me back. He does. He wants you back because He loves you. And He's wanting to give you some amazing grace. He wants to change your life in a way that's pleasing to Him and it'll just be awesome for you. So this morning, as we sing, would you let the Spirit of God take your heart and tell you what you need to do for Him today as we sing?
Number 528.